So this is a mission that goes beyond, it's a purpose that goes beyond Bandsintown. I feel it's important for society in general, to be honest. It's to foster, to nourish creativity when it's still fragile, when it needed most. And yes, we're very, very engaged into this. And that's where we see our purpose.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 222. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is my co-host, Ed Isola. Ed, what's up, man? I'm really excited about this episode. We've been gearing up for this for a few weeks now.
It's pretty cool. It's one of the cool perks, I think, of being on Creative Juice is that you get to talk to awesome people. So it feels like we should not delay and just jump right into it. It's going to be an awesome convo today.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. I don't want to delay any further either. We've talked a lot about live music and touring on this show in the last 2 years, and we're always looking to learn more about what's happening on the live music front, especially on the heels of the pandemic over the past 2 years. And we thought that there would be no one better to talk to about this, no one who's more immersed in live music and how fans are interacting with live music than the wonderful people at Bandsintown. And we know that a lot of artists use Bandsintown in their stack. So really, really excited to have one of the co-founders and the managing partner at Bandsintown, Fabrice Sergent, here with us today. Fabrice, welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here.
What's up, guys? So happy to be with you today.
Yeah,
and thank you for your kind words. It's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really excited. I think a lot of our listeners use Bandsintown. That goes without saying. But I'd love just, to kind of kick off the episode here, to give you a chance to introduce yourself, tell our listeners a bit about you, and for someone who might be totally new and getting into this for the first time, maybe give a little bit of a brief on Bandsintown for the uninitiated.
All right. Me, I'm a tech entrepreneur, tech and media entrepreneur, but I'm a music fan at core, like a true passionate live music fan. And my co-founder, Julian, is also a live music fan. So that's how we met and how we bonded. And it was always a very, very important part of our lives. So Bandsintown today is the largest concert discovery platform in the world. It serves 70 million registered users, which we just passed. So it's kind of a scoop. You're the first to hear it. We serve artists and help about 500,000 artists to stay in touch with their fans, to list their events, to really engage with their fan base. And, the fan base, their followers on Bandsintown are definitely the most engaged, the most passionate concert goers. So now we also help advertisers and promoters and labels to, release new music and announce shows, support tours. So it's a whole ecosystem that we've built over the years.
I think the word ecosystem is something that always perks up my ears a little bit. And you mentioned the user base at Bandsintown, the end user base, music lovers. Man, I would love to talk a little bit about the user base and the ecosystem that you guys are building. Because I think it's something that a lot of artists don't realize is that Bandsintown has a huge user base outside of artists. 500,000 artists is one thing, but 70 million end users, and congratulations on the growth too. That's really exciting. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and give some of our listeners the insights into that, just the growth strategy that's going on there. What artists should know about tapping into that base?
It's a great question because actually what's so special first is that we reached this 70 million user base without any marketing. So the first thing that you need to know is that this growth is purely organic. So we'll talk about marketing strategies and building fan base and stuff like that later on for artists. It's very true that Bandsintown is one of these love brands that people join because it really serves a need and it solves a problem, which is to never miss a show, and it helps discover new artists. So this user base is usually you're joining Bandsintown because of a friend who recommended Bandsintown. It's not because of a marketing push. It's also because artists tweet and post on socials that they are, listing tour dates and or sending messages through Bandsintown that fans should be aware of. So all of this, for all these reasons, this user base is extremely authentic, and it's now from a age group perspective, it covers the entire spectrum of the concert goers. So there's not, people sometimes think that it's skewing toward this group, this age group or that age group. It's not really true. Anybody going to concerts is using Bandsintown. Not everybody, but I mean, it's unfortunately, but almost. No, I mean, it's very diverse in terms of geography, age, genre, everything, all kind of music, even classical to a certain degree. So from rock to, electronic to country, there's really not a specific genre of music that these users love. What we help them do is we not only alert them on when their favorite artists come to town, but we help them discover new artists because we have a very special algorithm that we built learning from the music taste of these 70 million users to recommend artists that fans should discover. So 50% of our fans go to show of an artist they had not heard before, a Bandsintown recommendation. That's the kind of users we have. And once they trust Bandsintown for recommendations, then they'll get addicted to it. So we send about 10 million people to ticketing companies every month. 50% of these people click on shows of artists of less than 100,000 followers, which means relatively small artists. And the reason they do so is because of a Bandsintown recommendation. So it's very interesting, to learn that this user base is curious about music discovery. They're spending money to buy tickets and they're curious about music discovery.
I'm really glad you brought that up, the discovery portion. I mean, it dovetailed perfectly into the next thing that was kind of in the back of my mind as I was preparing to talk with you today, is the recommendation engine. The stats about the outbound marketing that Bandsintown is doing for recommendations, and then the click rates and how fans in the Bandsintown ecosystem are moving, where they're going from, I want to say, like cold, unaware fan or new potential listener to a concert goer. That's really, really interesting. So how does the recommendation engine work with Bandsintown? Is it based on RSVPs that fans are doing for other shows? How does it work? Our listeners are certainly tech friendly, so feel free to go heavy into it. I'm really, really curious.
Okay. So look, everything is data driven at Bandsintown, actually. We create for each music fan what we call a music DNA, which is a music profile, which is very specific to each individual that joined Bandsintown. It's kind of a representation of your music taste. And the way we learn that is with your permission. We either, look at what you click in terms of ticket clicks, comments. We also enable you to sync your favorite music streaming accounts. So Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, all of them, really. It's interesting, actually, that most fans sync more than one account. So they would sync, for example, Spotify and YouTube. So there's nobody, I think, in the marketplace that has a better understanding of the music DNA just because of all this type of sources that we can aggregate for one fan. Then the algorithm will learn on the artist side, who are the artists. So artists can create an account on Bandsintown. The more the account is precise about the artist. So the artist will add its music links, its music genre, the artist they believe they compare to. So a lot of data points that they provide to us.
Gotcha.
And we will create something that is highly sophisticated, that is a mix of actually data that are provided and data that are learned from the consumer behaviors. Now, what we did is we tweaked a little bit the algorithm, and I'm very proud of that, I have to say. In other words, we clearly recommend smaller artists. We're very proud of alerting fans on their favorite artists, and obviously, when I say 500,000 artists have created an account on Bandsintown, it's also, it's 97% of the Billboard Top 200. It's 90% of the top 4,000 artists on tour in America. So it's everybody of all size, all genre. However, we believe that we are way more helpful to the fans and to the artists to help the smaller artists. So the algorithm has been tweaked to really, really reflect and push, in fact, discovery and help the smaller artists. It's working pretty well once you educate it and you play game with it.
That's really interesting. I'm curious the philosophy that kind of came into wanting to do that. We're very, very much team indie here and trying to help artists of all kind of walks, from indies that are just getting started and are trying to build a fan base to the artists that are, in the Billboard Top 200 and are trying to grow build a music business in more sustainable ways. But that's very future thinking, I think, about how to drive the industry forward, to be like, we have to bring up the artists that are new and that are up and coming. Was that some of the philosophy that came to making that decision for your algorithm?
Yes, we are on a mission to help artists build sustainable future, which means that it's not like a one shot, or it's along the long run that we want, over the long run that we want to help artists. There's a reason for that. There's a philosophy underlying this. I think that, live music is one of the last tribal experiences. And in fact, if anything, COVID proved that we're missing it. It's the moment when people are all together in the mosh pits, experiencing and cheering for the same artist. They get smarter, they get more tolerant, they get less stupid, if I may, because, they're all together as humans with there's no genre, sexual orientation, there's nothing, no race that come into play at that moment. We're all together as humans cheering for the same artist. And I think that live music is also one of the last resorts of freedom of speech, to be honest, because when you're a young artist and an indie artist, you're very, very free to say whatever you fucking want on stage,
Yeah.
And that's really, really, really so supporting this, to me, supports cultural diversity and diversity in culture. So this is a mission that goes beyond, it's a purpose that goes beyond Bandsintown. I feel it's important for society in general, to be honest. It's to foster, to nourish creativity when it's still fragile, when it needed most. And yes, we're very, very engaged into this. And that's where we see our purpose.
That's so inspiring, man. The mission really does go deep into the human psyche. I agree with you 100%. Ed, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this as well, as someone who just got off the road, about live music. It really is it's a spiritual experience in so many ways, bonding people together. That's live music was one of the first, probably, to not put weird language around it, but I think for a lot of people, one of the first religious experiences they probably had,
Yes, it's a communion, in a way, a communal experience. I'm trying to use the right word.
Yeah.
That is indeed very spiritual, and you're absolutely right. It's maybe the analogy to religion or religious experience is probably true. So, it's really critical for societies, and believe me, in media today, in culture, etc., there's not so many spaces where people are free to express their opinions and their feelings, their frustrations, their hopes. In movies, it's hard to produce a movie. You have to go through a limited number of companies. In book publishing, there are 5 big. I'm not saying that these people are not making the right choice. They are just their choices are driven by where they see profitability and where they expect, blockbusters to succeed. And that's very legitimate. I'm not criticizing this. Sure. But that makes movies and books and stuff very uniform. Yeah. And certainly legitimately channeled to cater to a certain audience to essentially meet success. I think that live music is way more diverse than that. And that's okay. That's great. We need that to nourish culture in our society.
I think that's so well said. There's a difference. There's a difference in the profit motive. And like you said, nothing wrong with the profit motive of film industries or the book industries or even the e-commerce and digital side of the music industry. But there is a nugget of something different when it comes to live music. And I would argue music in general, but we would be a biased group of people to probably say that on this show. But yeah, I totally agree with you. On the And actually, I think this is an interesting kind of way of bringing in the business end of what you guys are doing at Bandsintown for artists, allowing them to, create sustainable businesses off of what they're trying to do with their live shows, with their tour marketing, to build that into their business. I'd love to know a bit about when the shift began inside of Bandsintown, expanding your feature set beyond, tour date listing, and kind of what the thought process was there, and where things are going. I know the fan management suite has been rolling out, and more features have been adding to it. So I'd love to hear more about that and what you guys are doing with it.
Well, it started probably 5 years ago when we decided to add a new feature which enabled artists to post messaging to their fans. At that time, people were fairly skeptical because, Facebook was very strong and there was other platforms to do so. Now, what happened is that artists, especially the most engaging ones, started to use this posting feature. Last month, we had like 3,000 artists posting messages to their fans, sending tens of millions. I think we sent 70 million emails and messaging them, push notifications. The messages appear on the artist page on the web, on the mobile web, within the app. It's being sent directly to the email box of the fans, and it appears as a push notification on the app. So it's a whole messaging function that was launched several years ago. Now, during COVID, we slightly changed something, which we enable artists to directly post these messages to the inbox of the fans and trigger post notifications. While before it was, you had to click on the message to get to the platform and see what the artist sent. So we did that during COVID because we thought that, again, artists needed the help and we had to be as generous as we could be, which was equivalent or quasi-equivalent of granting them access to their fan base for free, as if they were an opt-in in their own email systems, right? Yeah. Because you can literally send a direct message to your fans. So we bring to the artist this engagement platform with an audience built in. And that's the first thing. We help with the discovery system. So in case you don't have enough of an audience, the system will build an audience for you in a way by helping you being discovered. But right after COVID, like over the last 12 months, we thought that we should shift gear. COVID showed us how important for artists it is to own first-party data. I think we learned from that because if you want to build sustainable future, you have to think beyond the short term. Even if you're successful, you have to think beyond the short term and think about the long term. And the best way to protect yourself from setbacks, career slowdowns, or even situations like COVID, which hopefully will not happen again, but still we have to learn from it. When it's hard to go on tour, to make money and to generate sales and to sell to streams and stuff, social network are not sufficient. Social network, first of all, they don't allow you a direct access. So if you post a message to social networks, only those who will see it will anyway have a chance to engage with it. And as we know, social networks expect artists to pay to be seen, which is not our case. So social networks are, from that regard, let's say, quite tricky to navigate. And in any case, they don't provide you with the location of your fans. They don't provide you with the ability to really send a direct message, which we provide. That's why our platform became so successful. And so after COVID, we thought, well, why don't we actually expand this, enable fans to build artists to build first-party data, so to acquire their own emails, to engage with the fans that they have on Bandsintown, but also the fans they may have on they have acquired from other platforms, and to send emails and communication to these fans. It's emails and it's also potentially it's going to be SMS. So to send messaging from the Bandsintown platform. So they have a one-stop shop where they can manage, if you want, all their relationships with their fans. And that's very new. We call it indeed the fan management suite. It really starts from building an audience, managing this audience, and engaging with this audience. And we have right now in beta test and listeners to this podcast can apply. Beta test mode, a platform which includes the email builder. It makes it very easy to send emails with tour dates included and many other features, videos and socials and stuff. So we're trying to deliver a full platform which is free to the artist and continue to increase the value we contribute to this community.
It's really interesting how COVID was obviously like an eye-opener is probably the understatement of the freaking century, but a pivotal point for you guys to start opening up this feature set and then looking beyond it and saying, okay, here's what we've done. Now, how can we take this a step further? I'm curious, how is the fan management suite? How are you guys leveraging that with Bandsintown's existing user base and the network to power artists to be able to use it? Because I know, for a lot of artists, first off, like big green flag on our side too for first party data. That is definitely something that we probably ramble about on this podcast more often than anything else. Having that as a source of truth and being able to own the channels that you market on is, a big part of our ethos as well. But I'm curious, how does the massive user base that you guys have playing a role in that? And where do you kind of see Bandsintown's messaging platforms for email and SMS differentiating from email marketing platforms like MailChimp or Drip or, things that are synced up with e-commerce? Where do you see the future going in that way?
It's what I said. We bring a messaging platform with an audience built in. So in other words, if you start an account most of the artists have an account on Bandsintown. And I, by the way, I recommend to the smallest to start early and as early as possible to claim their page and definitely start using Bandsintown even when they're very, very small. So every artist that have an account will be able to use this messaging system. They'll be able to upload the pre-existing contact to the platform and obviously keep full ownership of it. And they will be able to send the same message to the Bandsintown follower and to their own emails and contacts. So we'll bring efficiency. It will bring the same commerce opportunity. So we're adding ticketing, commerce, NFT integration. So things that, artists want to promote using emails, basically. And so the big differentiation is that you don't start really from scratch. You start with an existing audience. It does also improve, by the way, our existing messaging systems. To build up these emails and stuff, you'll have a much robust and flexible messaging system. So we will see how far we can take it. But I think it's really, really promising because I don't think anybody else did that before to create such a platform with a pre-existing audience.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It almost sounds like it's setting up Bandsintown to be a marketing channel in and of itself instead of a replacement or a bolt-on to existing marketing channels because the audience is there and the recommendation engine is doing the work that it's looking to do. I think that's a really interesting and pretty fantastic vision. It's really, really cool. It kind of gives artists a leg up a little bit in a lot of ways. That's great. I'm curious, as these features have been rolling out, do you have any particular launch use cases or case studies that you might want to share? Anything particularly interesting from artists that you can talk about? Obviously, I know how these things go, but I'm sure our listeners would be interested just to hear here's some numbers, hear what's working, what's not, and kind of what's going on.
We have many artists using the new platform because, first of all, we deployed the new opt-in flow and the new platform across the entire artist base. So the first thing I need to say is that if you're an existing artist on Bandsintown, you don't need to do anything. You're going to benefit from the new widgets. There's a new widget and API that helps acquire data, right? That is already available. And this flow, this updated flow, is automatically added to the existing users of Bandsintown. So it's not like, so if you have not noticed yet, go to your Bandsintown for Artists dashboard and you'll see that there is a new tab called Fans. And in this tab, you'll have access to your data. That's the first thing. So talking about use case, there's thousands, and I can drop names. Charlie XCX, for example, was one of the first to use it. Phineas. There's plenty, in fact, that there are obviously management teams that are super innovative and curious about new things. And the names that I just mentioned have fantastic managers. So they were very eager to test, but it's deployed across now thousands of artists, right? So that's the first thing, to acquire and build audience. You need the tools on your website, on your socials. We have a smart link that enables you to acquire pixels as well, right? To retarget or build audience on Facebook. You can share the smart links on socials, on stories, on Instagram. That, provides some sort of a mini widget that helps promote the tour and tickets. So that's the first step. And then in the dashboard, you have this new fan tab to manage the fans. And for those who are part of the beta test, they can opt in to be part of that beta test. They can test the new email builder. And that's ongoing. There are thousands of people testing it. We want to co-build. Usually we like to co-build with artists. So we launched our own artist community, which your listeners are more than welcome to join. It's a new initiative actually that we launched this year to better listen to the artist community, to get their suggestions and feedback. We always engage with managers and innovative artists, regardless of their size, if they want to test stuff together. So it's a process, right? It's not like, ta-da, we have something new and go for it.
As much as we all wish we could snap our fingers and just make stuff happen.
It's not a snap, but we do have more than that. We have an ongoing discussion process. We have an artist partnership team, which usually is very responsive so that we can listen to the feedback. So it's a whole process. Hopefully by July, it's going to be fully launched.
It's very exciting. And that's super cool. The culture of what you guys are trying to build at Bandsintown is really interesting to me because, at the very top of this episode, you use the word ecosystem to describe what's going on between artists and fans on the platform. But it really sounds like Bandsintown is a part of that ecosystem as well, in how you guys are learning from the artist to make cooler stuff, for lack of a better word. I think that's really, really great.
We're contributing value to the artist. We're not extracting value from the artist. So in other words, all our tools are free for the artist community. So meaning that the artists, their managers, their agents, their labels can get provided the artist authorize it, get an access to their Bandsintown account and take advantage of these tools. So it's not, we're extracting value from the industry, like the advertisers, the brands, the promoters, the event organizers, the music streaming companies that wants to reach out to fans and to the concert goers. It would be really a shame or a missed opportunity to build stuff that our main constituency, which are the artists, don't appreciate or don't utilize, right? So this dialogue is something that has always been actually at the core of how we function, as much as we can. At the end of the day, we're a relatively small team, only 65 people at Bandsintown, so it's not like we can address all the requests and all the needs, but we're really trying to do our best to serve the community.
That's really great. I'm curious, on the note of serving the artist community, obviously the pandemic changed the face of live music in so many ways, and I know very quickly, I want to say it was in March of 2020, you guys had introduced, opened up essentially like live stream listing into the platform. I'd be curious to chat a little bit about where you see the future of live music going, what insights, but just based on the massive amounts of data that you guys have, what insights could you share with our listeners? And what's kind of been happening on the live stream front from your purview at like the broad market level? Is there still a lot of adoption of live streaming in the same way that we were seeing, through 2020 and a lot of 2021? I'm curious what you're seeing from your end, because we certainly hear a lot about it and we see what artists in our community are doing in the larger industry, but you guys have access to so much data. So I'm mega curious.
Okay, let's talk about live streaming. I think that we launched live streaming, so we indeed were kind of first to reach out to Twitch to launch our own live stream channel. We did also help artists create their own Twitch channels. We produced 14 to 1,500 shows at a time when promoters were not doing much, where we put on stage. We launched our own live stream subscription during that time, and we produced 100 shows in venues and with great artists that we booked for this purpose. So we've been very, very active during that time. And for most of these artists, they told us that we were the first to teach them how to live stream, and we helped them discover. We also brought to the format, we created a format where we had interviews with a host right after each live stream, so that we also made it more human and more interactive between the artist and the fans. So for all these reasons, we've been very active. And yes, we promoted about 100,000 live streams throughout the platform, which became like a format by itself. There's definitely a change after COVID because fans rushed to buy tickets, as you know, and to go out. We went from 3,000 upcoming live stream every day listed on the platform. I'm looking at my numbers right now to about 1,200, 1,500. So it's half of what it used to be. That being said, it's not insignificant, and I feel that it really it's now part of the artist marketing strategy. It's part of the cycle that some of them want to. So some of them are adding live streaming as a moment in their journey to promote an album launch, to promote a tour. So it feels like it helps fans and artists discover a new creative opportunity that satisfies needs which was not available before. And that's super important. You know, if you had asked me before COVID to attend a live stream, honestly, I would have said no, thank you. I mean, it would have some. Yeah. I was not. Now I love them, and there's a reason for that, because I feel that the artists are. I love live streams that create a real experience or something approachable or something special, and everything has been explored to do so.
Well said. I think one thing that happened during COVID with live streaming in particular is that it did force artists to level up a bit in terms of what the experience that they gave to their fans on live stream. Because I feel the same as you. I probably, if you had asked me prior to COVID, like if I would attend a live stream, let alone pay for one, I probably would have said no. But I've gone to quite a few now, and I've paid for a few, and they were, really solid, good ones. We spoke with the folks at Moment House on the show during the time when a lot of live streaming was really going on. They had a lot of insightful stuff to share as well. So yeah, I think that's a really, really great point. It is now a part of the culture. Actually, Ed's band just did a live stream for a sales promo a couple weeks ago. And I know experience was a big part of that for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you've kind of said here today is really cool. And the fact that you aren't just operating as a social platform, and it's more like, here's how we build your ecosystem. That's been super important for us, and like how we connect to our fans. And we use Bandsintown, and we send the emails and we do the blasts and all that stuff. And it feels like every time we do, we see a spike in tickets, which is really cool for tour dates. But specifically around the live stream, that's been something that's been cool for us too. It's like just going live and talking to people, play a few songs acoustically. It's like, a lot of artists don't do that. So the fact that you guys are making that easier to just like do the bare minimum, but then it's better than everything else everyone else is doing. It's really cool the way you guys are providing these kind of resources to help artists nurture and connect with fans.
Thank you. I really appreciate your words. It means a lot. I relate that back to the team. So live stream, we had to change a little bit the platform. It sounds like, they added live stream to the platform. Yes, but you have to manage time zone, which was not the case for live events. You have to manage to send the alerts 15 minutes before the show, not 2 days before the show like we used to for a live event. So there's a lot of things like that. You have to also add the link and not to buy ticket. I mean, the link to watch the show, and the call to action should be watched now. And there was a lot of things that we've changed within less than 1 month. The team didn't sleep, honestly, for 3 weeks when we had to do that. But, we felt that there was a risk that artists would lose touch and contact with their entire fan base if they don't go on tour. Not to say that they would also lose all revenue sources. So I think to get to your questions or where live music is heading, and it's the first thing I would say is related to live stream and to COVID is that COVID has been an awakening at the musicians' levels, especially the tech savviest one and probably the youngest one to some degree, that yes, you have to market yourself. That's why I repeat, owning first party data, having your own email base, your own phone numbers, is critical, because at some point, you have to build a sustainable audience that you can activate to a certain, and you have to build a stack to make it happen. So that's part of the artist life. Artists had to go from recorded music to live, from live to potentially to live stream. So all these learnings, they had also to invent themselves as storytellers on social networks to build awareness and stuff. And now we're asking them to add another layer of skill set, which is honestly super challenging, which is to become marketeers. But I think it's fundamental. It's also foundational because it builds the right foundation for the evolution of music and live music. So what I mean by that is that if you want to build a community using NFT and launch a Web3 type of initiatives, if you want to do things in the metaverse, guess what? You need emails. Yeah. That's how it happens. So it's going to be useful for that. If there's an intention to build a Patreon or a subscription-based initiative to stay in touch with fans and stuff, same thing. You need to market, and you need your own first-party data to generate this new recurring source of revenues. So all of this is not necessarily new, but what's new is the awakening that COVID created. And that now makes it, I guess everybody understands that's the evolution, if you want, of being a musician, is to become, to your point, a small entrepreneur and to really manage all these aspects of their lives. And personally, I think that Web3 is a huge transformation. And regardless of the evolution of Bitcoins and the price of and speculation that may have surrounded its birth, its future is bright, and it's going to transform completely the way musicians interact with their fan base. So I'm super optimistic about this prospects.
I couldn't agree more about the Web3 front. We've spent a lot of time talking about that here, so I would love to continue our conversation on that at another time for sure, because I'd love to hear more about your thoughts. But I totally agree. I think the need to own your marketing and really take ownership of it has been an awakening. I think you're right. I think the industry as a whole is going to be better for that. I feel optimistic as well. I'm really excited. And I appreciate you talking with us today, man. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing what Bandsintown is up to, and giving our listeners some insights into not only what they can do in the platform, but also what they can learn from it. It's been really valuable. So I really appreciate you hanging out today.
Well, thank you for having us. It's great, everything you do to help musicians and to educate them and to provide them support is fantastic. And, they need it. And so we're onto the same mission. So I'm more than happy to be here today.
Oh, thanks so much, man. Well, we don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for hanging out, Fabrice. Where can people stay in the loop? It sounds like the new Bandsintown artist community, is a good place for people to hang out if they want to be kind of on the cutting edge of what you guys are doing.
Exactly. So artist.bandsintown.com is the place to check. You can find all the details. Fan management suite is well described there. They can also reach out to support at Bandsintown if there's any question.
Awesome. Well, that's great. I think you guys know what you need to do from here. Check out everything that's new inside of Bandsintown. Fabrice, thanks so much for joining us today. We'll catch you guys next time on Creative Juice. Peace out, Indies.
Can y'all really feel the East Coast, feel the West Coast?